I believe that that is my cue to get this party started. So, welcome everyone. I am so excited that all of you have joined us tonight. This is a very special evening for our speakers who have been working so hard over the past 2 months to present and share stories that will have impact, will inspire you, which will open your hearts, will shift your perspective, and get you thinking about your life in a whole different way. I've had the privilege of working with each of these fine human beings for 8 weeks now, and the journey, the transformation for each of them, who all have joined this program for different reasons, has been truly remarkable. I believe every human carries a story that can open a heart, shift a room, or spark a movement. And our speakers are here to demonstrate that in real time. Some housekeeping things. First of all, please feel free to drop in the chat who invited you, who are you here to support, or who did you hear about this from. We'll keep the chat open all night, and I'll be dropping a link to a Google form in the chat in case anyone has any questions that we want to make sure we get back to you with answers for. We'll pull all of that together, and we will make sure that our speakers have that information so they can do their outreach. You can see our producer Kate has dropped that in the chat. That's for your questions. We're not going to take a lot of time for questions through the evening because we've got quite a packed program. Tomorrow, we'll be following up with you with all sorts of wonderful giveaways with the recording of the presentation, but I shouldn't have said that. We want you to stay on all evening if you can. That would be great. And we just are just beyond excited to be here with you tonight. So a little special thing about this evening. Some of you know, if you've been following me, that I joined the board of an organization that really changed the way that I think about stories, and frankly, the way I think about storytelling and hope. And it's called Guitars Over Guns. And what we do is simple, but it's life changing. And that is that we pair young people facing some of the toughest challenges with mentors and who show up every week for them. They lead with love and use the power of music to help these young people from inner city schools tell their stories before the world tries to tell those stories for them. And to that end, we're going to be raising some money tonight for Guitars Over Guns during the evening as well. Tonight, your registration was free, but if you feel moved or inspired by any of the speakers, even the smallest donation will do so much to change the lives of these talented young people. So, keeping to this theme of Guitars Over Guns, we're particularly excited that our kickoff speaker, Tiff Boom, represents Guitars Over Guns. And let me tell you a little bit about Tiff. Tiff's poetic talents, her strong leadership and commitment to community has afforded her opportunities with industry-leading brands and international organizations like Foot Locker, obviously Guitars Over Guns, and the United Nations Human Rights Organization. Tiff Boom's debut book, Safe Word, boosts positive poetry and mindfulness activities aimed to create a productive mindset and increased focus. And I am so very excited to turn the microphone over to Tiff Boom, our kickoff speaker for the evening.
Thank you so much, Alan, and welcome everyone. Have you ever noticed that traditional Chinese teacups don't have handles? And that's not a bad design. In fact, I want you to think of it as a life lesson. And the idea is so simple. If the cup is too hot to hold, it's too hot to drink. The cup teaches you to slow down, to pause, and to respect your feelings. Handles let us grip what burns us. We override the hesitation, ignore the resistance, and then somehow we call that hustle. The overachiever in us loves to ignore warnings. The people pleaser in us says yes when spirit is saying not yet. Too often we rush and numb the signals. That's how burnout sneaks in. Burnout is the cup saying, put me down, let me cool, come back when you can receive what I'm ready to give. That's my teacup voice. So tell me, are you living with the patience of a Chinese teacup, or did you put a handle on your mug to override the burning sensations? What if instead of pushing through, we started living like handleless teacups? Because that's where brilliance is born. I learned how to work from watching my mom fight to live. It was always just the two of us. She was my North Star. The summer before high school started, she got sick and never fully recovered. Overnight, I became a nurse without a degree, bathing her, giving shots, Googling symptoms at 2 a.m. I was scared and pretending I wasn't. For 15 years, it was a diagnosis guessing game. Hospitals, emergency rooms, remission, relapse, and decline. During one of her good stretches, I finally moved out, started my career, started a life. Then around 28, after a really tough breakup, I moved back home for what I thought would be a short time. And that's when she had the stroke. She came home from the hospital and was glued to the couch. I was right back in caregiver mode. Meals, medicine, oxygen, repeat. One morning, I brought her breakfast. She was on the phone with a relative. And for those of you who don't know, a Jamaican mother will narrate your whole entire life story like you're not standing right there. And that's when I heard her say, clear as day, Tiffany gave up her life to take care of me. It was a truth I hadn't let myself say out loud. I froze. Part of me wanted to argue, like, no, I'm fine. I'm still doing my thing. But another part of me knew I was tired. I was grieving a life I hadn't yet lived. I was grieving a traditional mother-daughter relationship. I loved her, but I was burnt out. Caregiving taught me how to work with burnout to create brilliance. Burnout isn't a sign you're weak, it's a sign you've been oversteeped. Think of your life like you're making a strong cup of tea. Your commitments are the tea leaves. Initially, they're all good things, right? Chosen with care, like family, purpose, work. The pressure is the boiling water, which you need to bring out your flavor. But if you stay in the chaotic boil too long, everything turns bitter. And that bitterness shows up as exhaustion, cynicism, and numbness. So I'm not saying the answer is to stop caring, but it is to change how you brew. You set timers with boundaries, you taste as you go, and you take the leaves out before anything burns. What if instead of viewing burnout as a medical diagnosis, we thought of it as a check engine light, feedback, a signal, a warning that our values are misaligned, a boundary has been breached, or that we've traveled so far away from passion that there's no light at the end of the tunnel? When we learn to comprehend and respond to dashboard warning lights, we just may find that burnout refines and polishes. So I asked myself, if I'm going to continue to show up for my mom, how can I show up for myself? In the middle of doctor's visits and depression, I initiated a project I cared deeply about, a collaboration with Guitars Over Guns, an artist-based youth development program that led to a real recording studio in a community space, a community park where young people could record for free like professionals. And to date, that studio has served more than 1,500 middle school and high school students. I initiated that while exhausted, while caregiving. I built that with a team and no expectation of anything in return. But I gained so much. That project became proof that burnout doesn't have to be the end of you. It can be the birthplace of your brilliance. Today, with Guitars Over Guns, I oversee $2 million worth of after-school programming in Miami, where we mentor young people through music, and I'm the author of Safe Word, a book of poetic life hacks for more focus. So here's the lesson. Pressure doesn't just crush, sometimes it carves. And when life pauses you, you can still decide to grow. Caregiving taught me what the teacup already knew. Once you learn to pause, listen, that same pressure that's flattening you then starts to form you. That's the move from burnout to brilliance. It's not less responsibility, but more alignment. It's not a smaller life, but a truer one. And millions of people, maybe even some of you listening right now, find yourself in a similar story, caring, leading, overfunctioning, and quietly overheating. The cure to burnout isn't one size fits all because no two diamonds are cut the same. And I'm not sure what level of burnout you're experiencing, but here's three things I'd like to recommend. And if that's okay with you, we'll do the first one together. Say it out loud. You have to name it to tame it. What you won't name, you can't heal. Burnout empties us while expressing refills us. So let's express that thing that's burning you. Right now, I'd like you to raise your right hand and place it at heart center and finish this sentence to yourself quietly. The thing that's burning me right now is, I don't know what that thing is for you today, but I do know that naming it will help. Number two, fill your cup with something good. Burnout isn't just about overworking, it's too little meaning for the energy you're spending. So this week, I want you to do something meaningful. Dedicate 1 hour of your workday to a passion-driven project. Maybe it's mentoring a student. Maybe it's doing that thing that you've been pushing off for years. But you have to protect this hour on your calendar to power your purpose. And finally, wait for the cup to cool. Stop rushing. Rest isn't the reward for work, it's the requirement for brilliance. Pick a boundary you'll keep for the next 7 days. It could be as simple as taking a 10-minute walk or pausing before saying yes. If the request feels too hot to handle, express that and let them know. Listen, the choice is yours. You can live white-knuckled, gripping the heat, or live like a handleless teacup, wise enough to pause, brave enough to feel, disciplined enough to wait, and aligned enough to receive. I pray your brilliance is the proof that you respected the heat, honored the pause, and choose purpose over burnout. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Tiff. Snaps, emojis, love
Yeah.
for a wonderful presentation. And we've got the Guitars Over Guns information popping up in the chat throughout the evening. So thank you for being our kickoff, Tiff Boom. Next up, Annet van Duinen is an ICF, that's International Coach Federation, professional certified coach, global trainer, and international speaker who empowers highly sensitive and high sensation seeking people to thrive with clarity, courage, and transform their lives. And I know some of you are going to recognize that person that Annet is describing because it may be you. Annet.
Thank you, Alan, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, we have two lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one. And for me, that began on the back of a motorbike heading from Las Vegas to Fairbanks, Alaska, the moment that I reclaimed my wild, sensitive self. But before I tell you that story, let me ask you something. Do you ever feel things more intensely than others, or you crave new experiences? If so, you might be a wild sensitive, a rare and remarkable type of person. And I promise you, there is at least one wild sensitive in your world right now. Now, let me take you to the moment my wild sensitive woke up. For decades, I had lived the life of a loving mother and wife, trying to fulfill everyone's needs while ignoring my own. I was the one who kept the household running while also trying to build my coaching business from home. And this created a daily chaos where I was often expected to be in 3 places at once. And somehow I usually was. But in doing that, I kept molding myself into whatever everyone needed me to be. And while taking care of everyone else, I lost sight of who I was. And it took me years to finally face it, the wild part of me that had been caged and neglected for far too long. When that truth finally broke through, I did the hardest thing that I had ever done. I left. Not out of rebellion, but out of longing to remember who I was before I disappeared into the lives of others. And 6 months later, I found myself a world away from my old life, sitting on the back of a motorbike in Las Vegas, helmet on, heart pounding, at the very beginning of a journey that would take me 4,000 miles north to Fairbanks, Alaska. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? Can I really do this at 51? I didn't wait for the answer. We rode straight into Death Valley, one of the hottest places on Earth. And by 10 a.m., the temperature had already climbed to 110, and the air felt like fire on my skin. And people had warned us not to attempt this in summer. And yet there I was, reclaiming a part of myself that I had nearly forgotten. That night, as we set up our tiny tent in the Sierra Nevada mountains, clumsy, laughing, exhausted, something in me cracked open. I was starting to feel alive again. And every day after that stretched me, it challenged me, expanded me. From California's intense heat to Oregon's endless forests and to the wild, untamed beauty of Canada. The Yukon's remote dirt roads where for hours you see no one, just wilderness and wildlife. And out there, far from civilization, I met myself again. A woman who loves intensity, a woman whose sensitivity isn't a burden, it's a compass. And when we finally crossed the border and we saw the sign, "Welcome to Alaska," I stood there in the cold wind, surrounded by mountains and silence, and I felt something indescribable. I had made it, not just to Alaska, but back to myself. And yet, even after this long, wild journey, something deeper was stirring inside me. I started to understand what makes me different. I always felt the world deeply, almost painfully. And at the same time, I craved intensity, novelty, adventure, depth, and meaning. 2 forces living inside one body, often pulling in opposite directions. And long before the motorbike adventure, I was always a person who felt everything intensely. Emotions were like full body waves that rushed through me before I had words for them. I noticed everything, the slight shift in someone's eyes, the tension and the emotion behind a smile, and the way the energy of a room changed long before anyone spoke. Inside my mind, it was never quiet. One conversation could echo in my thoughts for days. I didn't fit into any category I knew, and that confusion, that lifelong tug of war, is what eventually led me to the groundbreaking work of Dr. Elaine Aron on highly sensitive people, or HSPs. And her research showed that this is a neutral personality trait shared by 30% of the population. And she defined it by depth of processing, overstimulation susceptibility, emotional intensity and empathy, and sensitive to subtleties. It's an evolutionary trait. It's a trait found not only in humans, but also in most animal species as well. And learning this felt like someone had handed me some of the missing pages of my life story. Yet even with this understanding of high sensitivity, something still didn't align. There was still a part of me that didn't feel explained. And a few years later, I discovered Dr. Marvin Zuckerman's research on high sensation seeking. People wired for exploration, novelty, creativity, and bold experiences. And he defined it by 4 aspects: boredom susceptibility, novelty seeking, thrill and adventure seeking, and disinhibition. And that's when everything finally made sense. I wasn't just a highly sensitive, I wasn't just a sensation seeker, I was both. After living with this duality in me for years, I saw a profile online of Randy, a man who rode through the jungles of Asia on a motorbike, dove with sharks, and traveled adventurously to 56 countries. From the outside, a pure sensation seeker, but his profile also said highly sensitive. Curiosity sparked something deep in me, so I reached out to interview him for my podcast, Sensitive and Strong. And endless conversations became a love where we explored the depth, the drive, and the wild, sensitive fire within us both. And we realized something profound. When you are both a highly sensitive person and a high sensation seeker, you don't simply carry two traits side by side. You become something unique, something the world didn't yet have a name for. And so we named it the wild sensitive, a term born from our lived experience, our science-backed understanding, and the love between two people who finally saw themselves in one another. And as we explored this trait more deeply, we wrote a book because the world needed language for a reality millions live in silence without ever knowing how to describe it. So being a wild sensitive is not a weakness. It isn't something to hide or to tone down. When fully embraced, it becomes a force that drives evolution. We catalyze change simply by being who we are. And in a world overwhelmed by noise, speed, and disconnection, wild sensitives carry exactly what's missing. Where there's conflict, we bring empathy. Where others see limits, we offer inspiration and creativity. And what the world is starving for is what we naturally provide. Let me give you a real example. In 1997, Randy was sleeping in a tiny tent with two friends high up in the Washington Mountains, recovering from an exhausting climb up the north face of Mount Baker. And in the dead of night, without warning, an avalanche roared down the mountain and buried them alive under 4 feet of ice. Total darkness, no space to move, no air to breathe. Most people would panic. Most people do panic. But this is where the wild sensitive wiring shows itself. Instinct blended with deep processing, intense awareness driven by courage. And even under crushing ice, Randy's mind didn't go blank. It became laser focused. His system, the intuitive, perceptive nervous system of a wild sensitive, kicked into full alignment. He sensed, not thought, and instinctively came up with a course of action that would save their lives. If he hadn't trusted that instinct, if he had doubted it even for a moment, none of them would have survived. Another example is Captain Sully. With his meticulous attention to detail, his calm, intuitive presence, and quiet courage, he landed Flight 1549 on the Hudson and saved 155 lives. Not because he followed the manual, but because he trusted his mind and intuition to process the moment. That is the power of the wild sensitive when fully activated. And there are so many others, President Lincoln, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, but also people like Robin Williams and Lady Gaga. The point is, being a wild sensitive isn't always about saving lives or captivating audiences or leading nations. It's about embracing your deepest wiring, the part of you that notices what others miss and feels what others avoid, and bringing insights only you can offer. It's about bringing your unique blend of depth, intuition, creativity, and courage into the world in the way only you are capable of. And that is when the wild sensitive trait flourishes. And so there's a significant amount of research on both traits of HSP and HSS, and it shows clear neurological signatures in the brain. These are real, measurable, and powerful traits. But here's the problem. Most wild sensitives grow up believing they are too sensitive, too much, not enough. And without understanding their traits, they begin to shrink and hide, slip into burnout, bore out, and life becomes a struggle. So what do we need to do? We must learn to understand the wild sensitive trait, elevate the voices of those who naturally experience the world with greater detail, and design environments where their empathy, intuition, and deeper processing abilities are recognized as essential strengths. Because when wild sensitives embrace who they truly are, we become an antidote in a world longing for more kindness, more trust, and more unity. And when wild sensitivity is guided by courage, it becomes one of humanity's biggest life-saving forces, essential for a thriving and a healthy world. So be wild and be sensitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Let's round of applause for Annette. So I truly have the best job in the whole world because every day I get inspiration from the people that I coach, and more I learn about new concepts and new things that I would never have learned otherwise. So Annette is one of 9 people who have taught me so much about the human condition. And I encourage any of you to reach out to her if you or someone in your life should know more about the traits of the wild sensitive. And we'll be sharing her contact information and all that tomorrow in our follow-up. Also encourage all of you, our showcase goes until 9 p.m. tonight, but our speakers have said that they are happy to hang out afterwards if people want to stay on for more personal Q&A. By all means, if your schedule permits that, we would love to see you after 9 o'clock. So thank you again, Annette. So our next speaker is someone who's become, well, not only a client, but a dear friend, and she is doing some really important work in the world. Shari Geller is the founder and CEO of Senior Options, a company dedicated to providing exceptional care management services. And her extensive experience, her commitment to client well-being, and her background in advocacy have positioned Senior Options as a premier resource in the care management community. Another person who we are here to learn so much about and from. And with that, I turn the microphone over to Shari Geller. Thank you.
Wow, that was some introduction. Okay. I was visiting New York with my parents for a family celebration. One of those big gatherings where everyone catches up, laughs too loud, and definitely eats too much. But while we were there, my 96-year-old great uncle Sam passed away. He was the last of his generation in our family. After the funeral, my dad was driving us back. It was quiet in the car, the kind of silence that comes after loss. I was looking out the window, deep in my own thoughts, when my dad blurted out, "Well, I guess I'm next." It hit me hard. Uncle Sam was gone, and now my dad, the oldest of the next generation, was suddenly facing the hard truth we all try not to think about. Using the rearview mirror, my dad watched as my eyes started to well up and declared, "My kids think I'm going to live forever." And without missing a beat, I replied, "You're not?" Nobody likes to talk about death, the dying process, or the time that leads up to it. But I do, because I'm an aging life care professional, and I have these conversations on a daily basis with our clients and their families, because I know it's all about going from denial to dialogue. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'm talking about aging and death, 2 words that make most of us shift in our seats, crack a joke, or change the subject. We are so busy living our lives, we are not focused on aging. And why would we? I'm curious to know if anyone in this room thinks about how they will be living in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, if you live that long. Are you going to be living a healthy lifestyle? Our society dictates, we don't think about it, and we certainly don't talk about it. But now let's say you're in your 50s and 60s, and you, your parents, or one of your loved ones are struggling in the aging process. You are not aging successfully. And now the question becomes, how are we planning for this piece of our life? Or what do we do now? Even as we sit on this Zoom, I can assure you, we all have at least one thing in common. We are all aging, but not everyone ages successfully. So what is successful aging anyway? Successful aging is being able to do the things you love most for as long as you can, well into your later years. And we all know the pillars of successful aging: good nutrition, exercise, mental stimulation, and social connection. As we age, things change, but not always for the better. With that said, planning will definitely help minimize many of the difficulties. I want to share with you some signs that you should pay attention to and dispel some myths in order to help you plan. One of the hardest things to know is what is normal aging and what is cause for concern. And why would you know that? It's not like we get a book in our early years that says, when you get older, check out these signs. They might be problematic. That is why there are experts to guide you through this process. I want to share 3 challenges that my team and I see our clients struggling with: cognitive decline, physical decline, and mental health. The first and most common decline we see in our elderly clients is cognitive decline, which refers to a person who has trouble with mental abilities that affect thinking, memory, reasoning, attention, or decision-making. It describes when someone's cognitive skills are weaker than what would normally be expected at their age. So a good way to think about your brain is that it has a filing cabinet with lots of information in it. So let's say you're 20 years old. You only have 20 years of experiences, skills, names, numbers, knowledge that you have accumulated. But fast forward the clock, and now you are in your 70s or 80s. You have decades of information in that filing cabinet that you have to retrieve. Sometimes that could be very difficult, even for someone younger. So take note, as long as a person can access relevant information to ensure their safety and independence, this is not concerning. Memory at any age is affected by stress, fatigue, injuries, medication, illness, and life transitions. Consult with a trusted professional, whether it be a neurologist or a primary care physician, to substantiate your concerns or to reassure you what you're experiencing is normal at your age. In 2025, approximately 7.2 million Americans aged 65 and older are estimated to be living with Alzheimer's, representing 1 in 9 people in that age group. Pay attention to what might seem like subtle signs, but they are not. Now let's talk about the second category, physical decline, which refers to a gradual loss of strength, mobility, endurance, and other bodily functions that typically occurs with aging, illness, or certain medical conditions. In simpler terms, it means the body doesn't function as well as it used to. As we age, the term activities of daily living, or ADLs, will become a household name. ADLs refer to eating, dressing, transferring, bathing, toileting, and continence. If a person cannot perform one or more ADLs independently, depending on where they are in the aging process, it is surely cause for concern. Add ambulation changes, such as holding onto chairs and walls to get across the room, or rocking back and forth in order to propel yourself out of your seat, and you are seeing clear signs of physical decline. Again, what you think is normal aging is not, and should be addressed immediately. Physical therapy, safe exercise programs, and home assessments can be extremely helpful. Next, I want to talk about something that's often invisible but deeply real: mental health. When we talk about decline, we usually think of physical decline, energy fading, memory slipping, and the body slowing down. But emotional decline is just as powerful and often harder to see. Emotional decline is what happens when someone's ability to manage or make sense of their feelings begins to break down. It could look like irritability, withdrawal, or numbness. It can sound like, "I'm fine," when really they are not. We all have bad days, but imagine that bad day never lifts, day after day. That is what depression can feel like. It's not weakness, it's disconnection. And the more we understand that, the more we can lead, not just with empathy, but with action. Lastly, another cause of emotional decline we should pay attention to is loss. As we age, loss becomes an inevitable part of our story. We may lose parts of ourselves, our independence, our hearing, our vision, our mobility. We also lose loved ones, our spouses, partners, family, friends, neighbors, and yes, sometimes even our own children. Each loss, whether big or small, can shake our sense of identity. These moments need not be white flags of surrender. They are red flags of awareness, signaling us to reach out, to adapt, take action, to care for ourselves and one another. Because decline is not destiny. Connection, purpose, and community, these are powerful antidotes to despair. Dr. Mark Agronin, a brilliant geriatric psychiatrist right here in South Florida, reminds us that reversible causes of impairment become less reversible with time. So awareness is not just knowledge, it's hope in motion. It's the moment we move from denial to dialogue, from silence to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up for Shari. So I only wish that I had met Shari about 5 years ago, going through the aging process with both of my parents, and a family that really did need to move from denial to dialogue. And to have somebody like Shari in my corner would have been a pretty incredible thing. And Shari leads with such heart, and that is something that is true for all of our speakers here. They are heart-centered leaders with incredible stories to tell and with such ability to inspire people to take action. So Shari, thank you again on behalf of everyone here tonight and everyone in the world that you're helping. Thank you. And now, a commercial from your sponsor. Who is your sponsor? Oh, it's me. So I wanted to just share with you something pretty exciting, and that is that we are beginning now to register folks for our next group public speaking program and story incubator, which launches in February. And starting tonight, the cart is open, and the early bird rate is $779. It jumps up to $979 come December 15th. And this is the exact program that the individuals that you're hearing speak tonight went through. And some are preparing for TEDx conferences. Some just wanted more confidence when they spoke in front of other leaders and in meetings. I share with them a way to tell their stories, to have greater impact so that their speeches aren't just heavy with statistics and data, but they are soulful stories that will inspire people to take action. The group is intended for business owners, professionals, leaders, nonprofit, CEOs. It really runs the gamut. And as you can hear tonight, everyone has a very distinctive voice, and it really is about bringing out the best of you in your presentation and to not just sound like everybody else. It's helping you to refine your message, to learn how to structure a speech, to learn how to tell a good story that lands well, delivery, as well as story development. So it's a 6-week program that will culminate with a showcase just like this one, and one private coaching call with me, with an incredible network of peers who are going through the program at the same time, coaching and feedback, and just more support than you probably even want. I am here 24/7 essentially to help you get your message out there in the world and really share your story and change the world. So we'll put the link in the chat, and we only will take 10 people into the program. I expect it will fill very quickly. And if this is of interest to you, we'll also be sending around the information tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. And you're all very welcome for that support. So with that, let's get back to our program. So it is a great honor to introduce my dear friend and fellow coach, Juli Shulem. And Julie, hello, Julie.
Hello.
Hey. Julie is a productivity coach and industrial organizational psychologist who works extensively with professionals who have ADHD, helping them create structure and reduce overwhelm. She's got a book coming out. She is making a huge difference in the world with her coaching and training programs and her speaking. And without any further ado, hand the virtual mic over to you, Juli Shulem. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say tonight.
Thank you so much, Alan. My journey toward understanding people with ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, began when my son was just 7 years old. One particular moment is forever crystallized in my mind. It's 7:15 a.m. Mom, I heard from down the hall. Moments later, it came again. Mom, I need help. I answered from the kitchen. What's the matter, Spencer? Then there was no answer. So I stopped making breakfast for my 2 children and headed for my son's bedroom. As I walked in, I see my dear little boy just standing there in the middle of his room with one leg in his underwear, otherwise naked, looking in the mirrored closet door as though in a trance. After a few silent moments, I asked, what's the matter, Spence? And as he took his gaze from the mirror to my eyes, he said, Mom, I keep forgetting what to do. My heart broke. Together, we got him dressed. It felt like having a toddler all over again because he couldn't manage tasks that a 7-year-old should easily be able to do. My son was bright and physically capable, yet his mind was so busy, so overwhelmed and distracted that he couldn't focus long enough to complete simple, everyday actions. So much so that the simple act of putting on his underwear was just too much to remember and complete. Now, if he had already finished putting on one article of clothing and had forgotten what came next, I could understand that. But in this case, he was midway through putting on his underwear, one leg in. So realizing the next step shouldn't have been a huge leap. Once he was finally dressed, I gave him a big hug and we walked down the hall to the kitchen. I finished making breakfast for both of my children, and as they ate and then gathered their school supplies, this heavy feeling settled in my stomach. I knew there was a long road ahead, not just for him, but for all of us. So for those of you without ADHD, I invite you to open your mind for the next few minutes to the possibility that your previous perception may have simply been a mere understanding, and that ADHD may not mean broken. So fast forward a couple of years, my son was diagnosed with ADHD, along with OCD and ODD, quite an alphabet soup for such a little boy. At first, I didn't fully understand what it meant for him, for me, or the people he'd meet in his life. So I did what I could at the time. I learned. I read everything I could find. And honestly, the more I read, the more worried I became because so much of it sounded hopeless. But here's what I tell parents now. ADHD is not a death sentence. I quickly realized I would need to become my son's frontal lobe, his prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that manages planning, organization, decision-making, and impulse control, to name a few of its tasks, because his wasn't quite firing on all cylinders yet. Over the years, we heard all kinds of predictions about what his life might look like. I chose not to believe most of it. Instead, I dove into learning everything I could about ADHD, the science, the medications, the alternatives. I wanted to understand what living with ADHD really means and how these remarkable minds could truly flourish because I don't have ADHD, but I was raising it, and at the time I was married to it. And decades later, many of the clients who come to me overwhelmed, distracted, and stuck, well, they shared that they have it too. So I made it my life's work to help people with ADHD to build their self-esteem and their talents and to shift how the world sees them. Too often they're judged by those who simply don't understand how their brains work. ADHD may look like chaos to you with all sorts of disorder and clutter in someone's environment, or someone who's frequently late to meetings or social events. They miss deadlines or may speak randomly with seemingly no filters. And there are reasons for these behaviors that many mistake for rudeness, thoughtlessness, being irresponsible, or incapable. But from my experience and observations, those with ADHD need to be listened to, understood, and encouraged, not criticized or torn down for what they struggle with. We all have shortcomings, every one of us. ADHD should be no different. Over the years, I've heard so many people describe what it feels like to live inside their ADHD minds. One person said, it's nonstop noise, like hundreds of TVs playing different channels all at once. Another told me it feels like their brain is hijacked without their consent. And one woman described it as life is coming at me all the time. Another person told me, if you want to know what it feels like to live with ADHD, just don't sleep for 2 days and then try to do your taxes. Your focus and memory are MIA, and frustration can quickly set in. You may even become angry or even depressed, and you'll want to give up and do something easier. So it's no surprise that people with ADHD jump from one thing to another. That shiny object syndrome is real. New things feel exciting, old things feel boring. And soon there's a trail of unfinished tasks, each one a small reminder highlighting what didn't get done. And let's not forget the inability to find things, which may become buried under the myriad things left for shinier pastures, or the embarrassment and often shame of feeling like you've let someone down yet again, including yourself. That's what so many people describe to me. The exhaustion, the overwhelm, the stress due to the constant battle with their own brain. Then there's the other extreme, hyperfocus mode, when something captures their attention and time disappears. A client of mine who was writing her dissertation started writing one Saturday morning when she figured there'd be fewer distractions. She channeled her ability to get into that ADHD superpower of hyperfocus mode, and she sat down to write. And she wrote all morning. She wrote through lunch. She wrote through dinner. And by the time she looked up and saw darkness, she realized she'd missed her friend's wedding. Her story is not unusual. Another client, a computer programmer, told me he'd sit down after dinner to work on a project for a couple of hours, and suddenly it was 3 a.m. As you might imagine, this can be a big problem at work for many when they need to transition to another task, project, or attend a meeting. Now back to my son. After 2 years, 4 specialists, and every alternative treatment we could find, we finally decided to try medication for him. Some helped, others didn't. When he was about 12, we decided to stop one that was clearly making things worse. I called a psychiatrist to explain, and he sternly warned me, if you do that, your son will end up on drugs or in jail or both. I was stunned most by this proclamation, to which I responded, not on my watch. That moment changed everything. It's when I stepped into the space between what I was being told and what I felt was actually possible, between what the doctor said and what my intuition knew. And I soon realized I was not alone. A mother came to me, desperate to understand her ADHD son. She discovered that her husband had been yelling at him and the boy's confidence was crumbling. The father agreed to meet with me, although reluctantly. He wanted me to fix his son. He asked, how do I make my 13-year-old act his age? And after several questions and talking with him, I finally asked, well, how old are your son's friends? And he said, 8 or 9. Why? I said, because that's probably where your son is developmentally. What if you adjusted your expectations to match that? Something clicked, and from that day on, he treated his son with patience and compassion, and their family began to heal. Now, most of the people I work with are professionals with ADHD, brilliant, capable, creative people who come to me to bridge the gap between how they function and how they want to show up in the world. Here's what I've learned after working with hundreds of people. When those with ADHD have structure with flexibility, they thrive. When they have permission to quiet their minds by taking a walk outside, meditating, or journaling, their creativity takes over. That's when they come up with those breakthrough ideas, the solutions no one else could find, the innovative strategies, or the fresh approach that changes everything. For me, I stopped using the word disorder, which is that what that last D in ADHD stands for, and started using the word difference. Because when you stop telling yourself you're disabled or broken and start realizing you're simply different, everything changes. Your mindset, your confidence, and your sense of what's possible. After all, difference is what makes us human. And if your brain works like those of Richard Branson, Shaquille O'Neal, or Paul Orfalea, he's the founder of Kinko's, by the way, that's not too bad. We need to take off the label and see the person. So the next time you discover that someone you work with, live with, or love has ADHD, or even suspect they might, remember this. They are talented, they are intelligent, they are creative, and they have goals and dreams as big as anyone's. By the way, my amazing son never became a drug addict and he never went to jail. At 19, he was incorporated and running his own software company, managing a team all older than himself. Today, he's running his third tech company, surrounded by other brilliant creative minds, many of whom also have ADHD. Does he struggle with executive functioning sometimes? Yeah, of course. But he's learned how to harness his ADHD superpowers instead of masking them. In my experience, people with ADHD can thrive when they learn systems and strategies to overcome things a neurotypical might take for granted. People with ADHD are incredible. They're innovators, creators, visionaries, each with something remarkable to offer the world. And by the way, telling someone with ADHD to try harder or just do it already or stop being so lazy is hurtful because those with ADHD are trying harder than you can ever imagine. Quite often, it takes them so much longer and requires so much effort to do the things that come relatively easily for someone with a neurotypical brain. When these exceptional individuals learn how to manage their time, create structure where none may have existed, simplify decision making, and replace procrastination with the right tools, they thrive. And most importantly, when they feel good about who they are, they can finally use their gifts to change their own lives and often the lives of others. Hopefully, you can appreciate these amazing people in your life, your company, and even your classroom. So, as I close, I have one request from a neurotypical person on behalf of the neurodivergent population. Recognize their value, make space for their brilliance, listen, understand, and encourage. Because when people with ADHD are heard and supported, they don't just survive, they create magic. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Seeing some lovely comments here. Thank you for the lives you've made so much better. You make an amazing difference. It just the work that you do is so significant, and I don't know many professionals who are as committed to the work that you do, both on a personal level as well as on a professional level. And so it is an honor to know you and to have worked with you these many weeks. And I just expect huge things from you with your book, with your speaking engagements, with all the things that you're going to be doing to get the word out there. So great job, Julie. Thank you for sharing
Thank you
your
so
personal
much.
story. All right. All right. Here we go. So now we're going to move into our next group of speakers. Tom Scott, Natalie Bendza, Stefanie Hingley, Keith Greiveldinger, and Kiran Ryan-Young. And first up will be Tom. We're sort of at the midpoint here. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Tom Scott. Tom is an award-winning CIO, COO, and author who's a master of the Human Operating System framework and co-author of Going Beyond Business as Usual. Tom translates neuroscience and systems thinking into practical strategies that help organizations and people overcome unconscious resistance, transform culture, and unlock breakthrough performance. And Tom, I don't know if Tom knew before he took this course, but he's a pretty incredible storyteller. So I think you're all in for a real treat. And with that, Tom Scott.
Thanks, Alan. So if I gave my speech a subtitle, it would be this: the day I almost killed my mother. Hold that thought. If you've heard of the sports metaphor, playing to win versus playing not to lose, please raise your hand. Okay. Playing to win means actively pursuing goals while you take risks. Playing to lose means playing cautiously in order to avoid mistakes and failure. There's a lot of research which shows that playing to not lose is common, and neuroscientists tell us why. They say it's because our brain's survival mechanism is wired to protect ourselves, to avoid looking bad, and to keep us dealing with what's comfortable and predictable. Unfortunately, that doesn't go well with high performance and meeting our full potential. My wife and I play pickleball with about 20 of our neighbors and friends, and I have secretly had them in a playing to not lose laboratory for the last 2 years. That's right, you heard me say I'm using my friends as lab rats. The laboratory looks like this. We rotate who we play with, and whenever my team is down more than 3 or 4 points, I will typically say, okay, it's time for a comeback. And then I will keep saying, we're coming back, we're coming back. We win those games over 90% of the time. In fact, the last time I did this was just last week. My partner and I were losing 2-5 when I pulled on this lever, time to come back. We ended up winning 11-6. That was an 8-point net swing. And we win not 90% of the time, not because we're better players. It's because the mindset of both teams shift. My team, we play more energized to win. The other team, they start playing to not lose. And it shows. Mild panic sets in, you can see frustration, and their unforced error rate goes way up. My business partner created a phrase that expands on this concept and takes it beyond the sports world. The phrase is at stake versus at risk. The name was inspired by his grandfather, who ran a general store in Montana and gave grub stakes to gold miners, which means he gave them supplies for free in exchange for a share of whatever gold they found. He risked getting nothing, but if the miners were successful, he stood to gain a lot more. At risk means protecting against what there is to lose, while at stake means going for what there is to gain. The brain's mechanism and default for humans and teams in particular is to operate at risk. Now, this works out well a lot of the times, but a lot of times it doesn't, because at-risk teams underperform and they frequently just repeat their past when what they really want is a new future. My mom was a great example of operating at stake. About 20 years ago, my family and I lived about an hour and a half away from her in a beautiful part of the country, Sandpoint, Idaho. It was national park level scenery and beauty, crystal clear water, and we occasionally had moose and bear wander through our backyard. We lived on the water and enjoyed all kinds of water sports. One year, my neighbor and I decided we would operate at stake and go for what there is to gain in terms of more fun and adventure on the water. And against our wives' better judgment, we bought a parasail. Now, not the kind, the cushy kind where you stand on the back of the boat and get lifted into the air by a winch. No, to use our parasail, we strapped you into a harness that had either a 200 or a 350-foot rope attached to the back of the boat. And to go airborne, you had to run across the backyard. It was a little dicey because you had to miss the tree in the back corner, and you had to be in the air before you hit a 5-foot sloped embankment covered with river rock. This was not playing it safe. This was going for what there was to gain and operating at risk. enabled by the fact that both my neighbor and I had really good health and life insurance. So to prove to our wives that we weren't the knuckleheads that they thought we were, we thoroughly tested the operation, mainly by airlifting a large rubber garbage can filled with water. This appeased our wives, but we're pretty sure neighbors all across that lake were saying to themselves, who are these crazy people giving garbage cans parasail rides? Well, we had many successful flights, and they were fantastic. They were worth the risk. One day, my mother, my 70-year-old mother, comes up to me and says, I've made a decision. It's my turn. I did not see that coming. And operating completely at risk, I say to her, Mom, I love you. No. Her persistent pleading finally won me over. So we strap her in the harness. All the neighbors are there. Our teenage boys are holding up the parasail while I'm in the boat taking up slack in the rope and saying to myself, this is not a good idea. My wife's beside me and she's saying out loud, I have a bad feeling about this. But we were beyond the point of no return. So when everything's ready, my mom yells, hit it. I push on the throttle. She starts running, takes 2 steps, and falls flat on her face. Now, there's one thing we learned from the garbage can experiments, and that was this. Once you start going, if you just keep going, you will clear the rocks, which was the big concern. So I kept going. Here's my sweet but tough 70-year-old mother sliding across the back lawn. And sure enough, as soon as she clears the rocks, and because I wasn't sure if she was okay, I cut the throttle just as she was being lifted into the air. But by then it was too late. When I get to her, she was fine. In fact, she said sliding across the lawn was a lot of fun. I assume that she's done. So when we get on shore, I say, Mom, you are amazing for even trying that. You know, you are an inspiration to everyone here as being someone who takes risks and goes for what there is to gain in life. You're a great example to your grandchildren. She comes up close to me and says, now, Thomas. She doesn't call me that often, so I know she's serious. Now, Thomas, you forget your heritage. In this family, when you get bucked off the horse, you get back on. Now, this wasn't just a metaphor to my mother. She grew up on a cattle ranch, and she literally got bucked off of horses and got back on. So I couldn't argue with that. We strap her back in. She yells, hit it, takes 2 steps, and again falls flat on her face. So once again, I keep going. She clears the rocks, and she's being slowly lifted into the air. It's just one little problem. Something happened that had never happened before and never since. Somehow, she got one of her legs draped across one of the parasail ropes. So she's going into the air, but she's going up inverted, feet first. All right, so as soon as I see that, I cut the engine, and when I get to her, again, she's fine, and in good humor, she says, well, that didn't go so well. And you know what? She was ready to do it again. But that's when my wife interceded, and, well, that was the end of Grandma's parasail adventure. But this is what I was left with. My mom did that because she learned that there's more joy in life going for what there is to gain than there is protecting against what there is to lose. And that's the lesson. There's playing to not lose, which means playing cautiously and avoiding failure or mistakes. And then there's playing to win, taking on manageable risk. Things like starting a new company, starting a new project, speaking up in meetings, which help you go beyond just having your history repeat itself. My mom left a legacy of someone who was willing to take risks and go for what there is to gain. And you know, for all of us, that is a key to living life to the fullest, and reaching full potential. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I think my mom would have been good at shifting teams from at risk to at stake. It's not hard to spot a team operating at risk. At-risk teams avoid looking bad, self-justify blame, avoid risk, and they don't collaborate well, among a lot of other things. To shift, the main thing a team needs to do is simply create a picture of what operating at stake looks like, which portrays a future that everyone wants and can align to. That could include many elements, but here's an example of 4. One would be taking on big things, even when risky, accepting that there might be failure, focusing on what to fix when things go wrong, as opposed to who to blame, and valuing the learning opportunity that comes from mistakes. And then you just make sure your actions and your team's actions are consistent with the picture that everyone is aligned on. I have seen teams shift in days, not months, from at risk to at stake. I think of one IT team in particular that was operating deeply at risk. For years, managers have been pitted against each other. People were afraid to speak up in meetings. Blame ran rampant, and mostly people kept their heads down and their mouths shut. When they embraced this notion of operating at stake, they shifted quickly. The result, 300% increase in output. There was department-wide recognition of the department's transformation, and departments who had been saying we can't get what we want out of IT began saying you have to slow down, we can't keep up. And among other big wins, people actually starting having fun at work. So to recap, operating at risk is the brain's default. It's just how we're wired. To shift to at stake means creating a picture that everyone can align on of what operating at stake looks like, and then keeping actions consistent with it. It's easy sometimes, but it takes awareness and practice. So what I'm inviting you to do today is sometime within the next week, see if you can observe when either your team or you personally are operating at risk, and take at least one step to shift. For example, if you're avoiding risk or your team is avoiding risk, go for what there is to gain and see what happens. Operating at stake opens the door for you and your team to meet your full potential. I hope what you'll do today is take what you've heard, take what I've just said, and experiment with how you operate. Because operating at stake can bring you increased success and greater satisfaction when you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Yay. I love that story. It's like Prairie Home Companion. I love also, somebody who speaks in front of corporate audiences all the time, but you're finding your comfort in also sharing a story that's personal and human, which is on message, but it really does bring out your most authentic, charismatic, a very, very endearing way of telling a story. So thank you, Tom. Thank you for all your hard work in the program. And
thank you, Alan. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So next up, and now, remember Monty Python? And now for something completely different. Natalie Bendza. Let's give Natalie the spotlight. Hey, Natalie, is a certified neurotransformational coach and the founder of the Human Force Field. She helps high achievers understand their emotional wiring, break out of survival patterns, and lead with grounded, authentic confidence. And I must say, in the 8 weeks that I've known Natalie, only 8 weeks, she has got me thinking more than I have probably ever thought about the topic of motivation, emotion, feeling, and just a whole new paradigm and a whole new way of thinking about things. So I hope you'll give her your very, very focused attention. And with that, I turn it over to Natalie.
Ah, thanks, Alan. Um, so I'm here to talk about motivations and the dangers of motivation. We live in this world that kind of idolizes the motivational story. We make posters and coffee mugs with motivational quotes to really help keep us going. We love quotes like, "The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step," right? Maybe this one: "If you want to achieve greatness, stop asking for permission." We tend to throw the word motivation around like it's magic. We treat it like the ultimate solution to everything uncomfortable, whether it's a difficult quarter, whether it's a challenging team, or a personal struggle. And I know because I used to live this story, like, completely. I lived it quite well, actually. Motivation, I learned, is the most dangerous success story that we have adopted. I was given the worst advice that I was ever given, which was embrace the struggle. So I don't know if any of you have ever received that advice. Embrace the struggle, push through. Anything you can believe you can do it. And I was quite young when I received this advice. Someone sat me down and said, "Natalie, life is not all rainbows and bubbles. You have to really embrace the struggle if you want to be successful." And I was a child and a teenager that loved life, and I could do anything. But at that point, I realized, oh, well, I want to be successful and I want the best life ever. So I really dug down and embraced the struggle. And I found it in an area that I think a lot of us find that struggle, which is trying to find validation from others. And just really hunting on the idea that if I worked hard enough, if I was good enough, if I pushed through enough and showed up for others, then I would be doing life right. So the problem with pushing through is when exhaustion hit, I didn't stop. I doubled down, I embraced the struggle, and kept going. And when depression hit, well, I doubled down again and I really pushed through. I grabbed some motivation because I took a look at my life and, well, it was working. It really was working to embrace this struggle. I had the house, the home, the kids, the husband, the job, you name it. I had the success, and I worked in finance. I had a really good job and I had moved up through the lines. I was doing wonderful and life was really working out for me. So I must be doing something right. And I reached for another motivational quote and I pushed through the exhaustion and the depression. And when I burned out, what did I do again? I reached for the one thing we all reach for: motivation. Here's the thing: if you're using motivation to avoid your own emotions, you're not motivated. You're disconnected from your own internal guidance system. If how you are feeling does not match what's going on the outside, you're disconnected. Motivation becomes empty when we use it to override our emotions. So for me, motivation became the tool that I used to silence fear, override exhaustion, and keep going when every part of me was begging to speak. And eventually, the bridge between my amygdala and hippocampus collapsed, and it erased my entire emotional timeline. And I had not realized prior to this just how emotional our existence is. When my timeline collapsed, I lost everything. My mind was silent. There was nothing. And then in the next moment, there was a heartbeat, and just pure, amazing love flooded me. And it said, "I love you." And it was my body, and it was saying, "I love you." Our bodies love us enough to carry our current story that we are asking it to hold for us, whether consciously or subconsciously. And the universe moves through emotion. Every decision you make, every choice you make is based off some emotional event that happened in your past. And when my emotional timeline erased, I no longer had a past or a future. I had just the present moment that my body was holding for me in that moment. The first cup of coffee was my first cup of coffee. Each conversation was the first conversation I had ever had. And it was beautiful and it was amazing. I got to live life through the eyes of a child. And it was very hard and very isolating. It's taken a couple years and the emotional timeline has reconnected. I had to reconnect with my emotional connection life, learn decision making, and recover the different parts of my mind. This week has been quite a struggle. My frontal cortex is coming online. And I did not realize the frontal cortex holds your sense of identity. It tells you how you feel about the things that you think about others and how you feel about how others think of you. So it's been quite an interesting week, and I get to perform this speech for you guys as I'm observing how it is that I relate to others. But here is the one thing that I realized when my mind stopped. Motivation wasn't helping me rise. It was disconnecting me from myself. It was silencing the very emotions in my body that was there to guide me. Fear isn't a weakness. It's a message. Anger isn't immaturity. It's truth. And sadness is not negativity. It's honesty. The moment that you stop overriding the critical signals in your body with attitude and grit, everything opens. The key distinction is this. Emotions live in the body. They come from the body, and they are all positive and they are all loving. And feelings come from the mind. They are the thoughts, the story that we tell ourselves about how we feel about something that has happened. So the emotions come in, and then it goes through this story, all your filtering in your mind, your values, your morals, your memories, your beliefs, your wants, your desires. And it turns into this story that then gets translated and sent back into the body as a feeling. And attitude is to the mind what clothes are to the body. You can slap on a positive attitude and push through. But just using a positive attitude to push through burnout or exhaustion or depression, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's like putting yoga pants on a broken leg and expecting to run a marathon. It doesn't allow the leg to heal. So here's the truth that I had to collapse to understand where true motivation lies. Motivation is not in the mind. It's in the body. Your body is not the thing holding you back. It's the friend holding you up. And it has been carrying your pain, your fear, your joy, your beginnings, and your endings, all of it without a single complaint. It holds the current page of your reality, your right now. And your mind sees the future. And when you learn how to talk to the body with your feelings, and you find the thought and the action that aligns and feels good inside with the body, then you have this conversation and you won't have to reach for another positive mindset to push through. You won't need motivational quotes or hacks or mindset games. Your body will carry you. It will feel great and your life will unfold. When you learn the language of your own body, you stop surviving your life and you start creating it. You start refiring the program that's running your mind, and you start creating a story that loves you back instead of holding you back. Once you feel that, once you actually experience life happening for you, you don't go back. It's so amazing. Because there's one truth that's more powerful, more stabilizing, and more authentically motivating. Sorry, this is the truth. I'm stumbling here. Your body already knows the way. All you have to do is listen. The key to motivation is not pushing through your fear or silencing your fear. It's having a conversation with it, not overcoming your depression or your exhaustion. but having a conversation with it and finding what is it in your life that is not aligning with your core frequency of love. Is there something in your life that's not loving and it's creating this feeling of exhaustion? Find that, and your life will start unfolding for you. Start having the conversations with your emotions, your feelings, your exhaustion, your pain, your inflammation. Sit with the body. Have a cup of coffee in the morning. Enjoy your life. Enjoy what you have right now, because right now you have the best friend you will ever have in your body, not in your mind. Your mind is for observing. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much. Show of hands. No, show of hands. Clap your hands. Emojis. So Natalie. So Natalie is one of our speakers, and I think this is true for all of our speakers tonight. They are thought leaders. They have a body of work. They have complex ideas that they're trying to put forth. And so refining the idea and also synthesizing it into a 10-minute speech is no easy work. We've got authors here, people who have written volumes on their topics. They are experts. So one of the things that we do in our work together is to really tease out a main message and hang a story on it, and provide just enough context so it makes sense. And Natalie, I think you did a beautiful job breaking down something that I think is very, very complex and difficult for some people to understand. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. All right, before we go to our last few speakers, I wanted to share a little bit about why I do what I do, and talk again briefly about the program that we're filling up for the next cohort. So I come from a family of storytellers. I was blessed with being surrounded by journalists and authors and speakers all of my life. My 94-year-old dad passed away last year, and I was sitting in the funeral at the funeral, and I looked around, and obviously it was a very sad day, even for a 94-year-old dad, sad. And I noticed there were 150 people sitting there, 150 mourners from different walks of life, different generations, friends, family, children of friends, children of family members, different races, religions. And what struck me was that the thing that everyone had in common was that they had been touched in some way by my father, who was one of the best storytellers that I know, but also one of the best listeners to stories that I know. And so the work that I do here is very much a legacy, is very much a tribute to my dad, to teach storytelling, to help people see that they have a story to tell, and help them have the confidence so that they never have to hide or shrink or play small with that message that they know they want to get out into the world. So again, our next public speaking group coaching program in Story Incubator launches February 3rd, 2026. The early bird pricing is in place right now. Here are all of the features, but over the course of 6 weeks to 8 weeks, we're going to give you a signature talk, a speech that you can be really proud of, like those that you're hearing tonight, that will help you create opportunities, shifts in the world, business opportunities, help people see possibilities that they didn't see before, bring you sales if that's something that's important to you. I think that any of our speakers here tonight would very, very gladly, they can give a thumbs up if they think that it was worthwhile for them. Their testimonials are on the sales page. And it's been a privilege and an honor to work with all of them. If anyone here listening tonight or hears the recording tomorrow thinks that they have a story that they want to get out there into the world, but maybe they don't know where to start, how to craft the speech, how to structure it, or if they have 5 million ideas and they don't know which one they want to refine to bring it to an audience, whether the audience is on podcasts, in front of live audiences or video, please take a look at the sales page, reach out to me for questions. We would love to have you in our next cohort. We're building a great community of storytellers, and I really do have the best job in the whole world. So thank you so much for letting me share and MC tonight with the great work that our people have done. All right. Take a deep breath now. Whew. All right. So our next speaker is Steph Hingley. Come on down.
It's me. Yeah.
Steph is a mindset coach who helps ambitious people redefine success beyond the checklist of achievements. After 20 plus years in global business, she discovered that real happiness isn't something we earn, it's something we create from within. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Steph over the past few weeks and months, and I know you're just going to love her message. So with that, Stefanie, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I spent a lot of my life believing that success was the path to happiness, and that if you wanted something badly enough and you worked hard enough, you could make it happen. And then you'd be happy. And I tested that theory everywhere when I was growing up. I was the A+ student because A was not enough. I was the non-runner who ran a marathon just to see if I could. Spoiler alert, I could, and I promised myself never to do that again. I was the figure skater who earned her gold test medal at 20, which in skating years is pretty much retirement. And I was the person who willed her way to a life in the UK because living abroad was a dream I refused to ignore. I remember so well how it felt to achieve. The sweetness of accomplishment, the pride from others. On the outside, the pattern looks so simple. Set a goal, work hard, achieve goal, earn praise, feel good for a minute, and then find the next goal. But was that it? I kept finding success, but I was left feeling unfulfilled. And as I got older, I started to see that success didn't always lead to happiness. And some of the happiest people didn't look successful, at least to me. So I began to think about what happiness was really all about and whether I'd been following the wrong road all along. As I reflect back, I realize I was sort of living my version of my favorite childhood movie, The Wizard of Oz. I was following a yellow brick road of goals, chasing an emerald city of success, always going after the next shiny milestone, convinced that once I reached the destination, I'd finally arrive and be happy. Well, my life operated just fine on the outside. For nearly 10 years abroad, and then we moved back to the US in 2019 with my family for my dream job. Another milestone checked off the list. But after a couple of years there, I was already looking for the next thing. Driven by success, with the idea that it would elevate my happiness, I joined a fast-growing startup without hesitation, thinking I was going to crush it. I poured myself into that job, and I was so excited about what the future had in store. 8 weeks later, I was on a Zoom call with HR, staring at a document that basically said, "You're not measuring up." I remember watching their lips move and hearing nothing. My ears were ringing and my pulse was in my throat. When the call ended, the silence was deafening. I just sat there, staring at my own reflection on the black screen, shocked, gutted, and terrified. My husband was also between jobs, and I suddenly realized there was no safety net. There was no plan B, no buffer. I had poured a lot of myself into my career, my time, my energy, a large part of my identity, and now I felt more lost than ever. Was I even on the right path, or did I just land somewhere over the rainbow without a map? I remember sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook, staring at it blankly and trying to understand where it all started to fall apart. What did I do wrong? The harder I searched for answers,
the emptier I felt. And then the question that scared me the most, if I'm not successful, then who am I? In that free fall, part grief, part identity crisis, I did what I'd always done. I tried to fix it. If I just got another job, I'd be fine. If I just made more money, I'd feel safe. If I just kept moving, I wouldn't have to feel this. But none of it worked. Turns out you can't productivity hack your way out of an existential crisis. The harder I tried to control what was happening out there, the worse I felt in here. And that was really the first time I thought, maybe happiness wasn't something I could chase on the outside. Maybe it came from somewhere else. Maybe it comes from the inside. My mind was totally spinning. My heart was heavy. Our budget spreadsheets were starting to look like modern art. And eventually, I just ran out of fight. I let go. And in that stillness, that very uncomfortable quiet, something cracked open. And for the first time, I wondered, what if everything I believe about success and happiness was wrong? Well, that question changed everything. Because once I stopped chasing and started listening, I realized happiness isn't something you earn. Happiness is an inside job. And if that's true, I wanted to understand how other people made sense of success. So I started asking new questions to anyone that would listen. I wanted to know, what did success mean for them? And how did they know when they were successful? I talked to a lot of people and I had a lot of fun doing research for this. And I learned something that truly surprised me. Almost nobody feels like they're successful. But their stories were also really inspiring. I was recently chatting with a friend of mine. He is, by any measure, very successful. He's led global companies, launched best-selling books, built wealth, legacy, and respect. And he said this, I've gotten everything I ever put my mind to. Every goal I set, I achieved. But even at the height of my career, the joy only lasted a few minutes. After that, I was chasing the next thing. You know, that pattern showed up over and over again in my interviews. It's what psychologists call destination addiction. Destination addiction is the idea that we believe happiness is waiting for us just over the next hill, the next accomplishment, only to realize that the milestone moves as soon as we get there. Just like Dorothy, searching for a way home, convinced the wizard had the answer. And when she finally looked behind the curtain, she realized the truth. The answer was with her all along. The courage, the love, the wisdom, it was never out there. It was here. In 2012, my partner and I quit our jobs and traveled around the world for almost a year. The places were stunning, but it was the people that changed me. We stayed with Sherpas in Nepal, families in Thailand. We met up with couples with small children living the nomadic life, farmers in Vietnam. These people didn't have big houses or titles and cars and salaries, but they were really happy. They had their health, they had their families, and they had a deep trust in what mattered to them. And I think about that. And I stopped chasing. And I paused long enough to ask the question I'd been too afraid or too unaware to ask before. What do I really want in this one life? How do I want to feel? What does success look like for me? And slowly, quietly, I began to rebuild. These days, my mornings start slower. I journal, I meditate, I actually taste my coffee. And before I even touch my phone, I ask myself, how do I want to feel today? Some days the answer is grounded. Some days inspired. But every day it's my choice. So now when I talk about success, I don't mean the next title or achievement. Success isn't something we earn, it's something we create. So maybe success isn't at the end of the yellow brick road. Maybe it's the moment we realize we've been home all along. And as Dorothy said, there's no place like home, except this time, home isn't Kansas, it's inside you. You get to define what success means for you. You get to write your own story. So as we wrap up, I'll ask this. What do you really want in this one life? How do you want to show up? What will success look like for you in the future? Is your happiness coming from the outside in or the inside out? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. You're getting a lot of love here, a lot of hearts. And my my Wizard of Oz passion is, I'm directing it to you right now. Thank you so much. All right. So it's late in the evening for many of us. And so I think what we need right now is a dose of positive energy from one of the most positive speakers I've heard in a very, very long time. So let's bring on down Mr. Keith Greiveldinger. Greiveldinger, did I say it right? Correct me, Keith.
Yep, you got it.
All right. Keith is an author, a speaker, a social influencer, and a true sales evangelist with a passion for helping people unlock high achievement. He's the host and founder of the Win It Minute, where he inspires thousands to create a winning mindset 1 minute at a time, 1 day at a time, right? We're now also, we're pivoting, right? A little bit. And we're going to hear from Keith about positive media and how it shapes our brain. So let's do it, Keith.
All right. Thank you. I want to start today with a simple truth. What you feed your mind determines the life you lead. Just like the food we eat fuels our body, the media we consume fuels our mindset. I want you to think back to a time long, long ago when there was a thing called boredom. No, I'm not talking about when you have a weak Wi-Fi connection and your Instagram takes more than 5 seconds to load. For those of us around, let's say pre-1995, at stoplights, you actually sat there doing nothing, alone with your own thoughts. But now, at a stoplight, or whenever we're in a line for something, we immediately reach for something to consume. We grab our phones. We have this constant need to be constantly consuming something, anything, at all times. Now, I'm not saying these were better times, but now our thoughts are generally not of our own, but come more from what we're consuming or watching daily, or at least are heavily influenced by it. This is because it's proven that the media we consume can either be a powerful tool to sabotage us or supercharge our success. But it all depends on how we let it influence our mindset and attention. And a few years back, I realized something simple, but powerful. I wasn't just eating junk food, but I was feeding my mind junk on a regular basis. And how many of you are conscious of what you feed your brain? I made this realization and made change. Now I've dedicated my life's work to change the way I consume media. Today, I want to do the same for you. See firsthand how it works. That's why I'm so passionate about this. But first, let me show you the story that was a turning point for myself and the impact it had on my life. Because sometimes in life, you can have experiences you don't want, or you do not ask for, or even invite into your life. But they are experiences that can literally change your life. This happened for me when my first child was born, my son Adrian. I was so excited to be a parent. I had so many exciting emotions. I can remember it in the delivery room, the balloons, the party, the streamers. It was so exciting. But then it all came crashing down. When the doctors came in and said, "Your son's alive, but needs open heart surgery to fix a hole in his heart." You know, the one where they crack open his chest, saw it open down the middle, and pull out a heart to operate on it. How would that make you feel? For me, I became frustrated and upset at the world, at God, at anyone I could be mad at. I remember I was given a book thinking it might help. But when I read it, it just seemed to make me angrier. I I ripped the book up, I spit in it, and I actually threw it in the garbage in a fit of rage. I cursed out the poor author and blamed them for all my frustration I had built up, something I'm not proud of. Life is not fair. This is not fair, I thought. But as fate would have it, the book was actually staring at me from the garbage. And on the cover was the author. His name was Nick Vujicic. And I'll never forget, because if you know anything about Nick, he has overcome more challenges and obstacles than anyone I know, way more than myself or my son. Because this author was born with no arms and no legs. And yet he was going on inspiring others. And I thought, who am I to sit here wallowing my self-pity over this? And at that moment, I realized it was a gift to change my attitude. It was a gift to change my thinking and my mindset, maybe even a gift from God. While reading this book, I realized that gratitude is a powerful tool, but you need to decide to be grateful. And it all starts with our mindset. This is what I discovered, that what we feed our minds sets us up for success or failure. Because again, the media we're consuming can either be a powerful tool that can sabotage us or supercharge us. But it all depends on how we let it influence our mindset and attention. So first, what is a mindset? Mindset is the way people think, and the way you do anything can be taught or learned. So yes, we can all learn a new mindset. And you know how YouTube or let's say TikTok, the secret sauce that make it so popular is a thing called an algorithm. You're gonna be asking yourself, what's an algorithm? Well, an algorithm is like this. Have you ever watched a video on, let's say, how to make sourdough bread? Then you see one video after another on the new craze of making the perfect sourdough bread. You start talking to all your friends on this new craze of sourdough bread because obviously these videos are all over the internet because that's all you see. But your friends look at you like, you know what you're talking about. Well, it's not that sourdough bread has taken over the world. Well, it is quite tasty and healthy. It's just that YouTube or TikTok has created your algorithm to show you more of these videos because it detects it's something you pay attention to. Well, our brains are exactly the same. Our brains also have an algorithm that does the exact same thing. It's the original algorithm. It gives you more of what you place attention and emotional energy into. That's why it's called a feed. It feeds your mind. And our brains into a bigger part of our world, it's just like that cell phone you're consuming. It's controlled, but you actually have control. You get to determine that algorithm. Thus, you control the algorithm and your life. But here's the key. Whatever you focus on longest becomes strongest. And this isn't just some motivational talk. It's actually science. It's called the RAS, or reticular activating system. It's the part of our brain that filters what you notice. A great example of this is one time, as my family grew, my wife said, we need to get a minivan. But I don't want to buy a minivan. Nobody drives minivans. Cool. But, of course, my wife said so. So here I am test driving a minivan. The next day, as I was wallowing once again in my self-pity, I started to notice minivans everywhere. They were at the gym. They were at Starbucks. They were all over the freeway. I was like, wow, minivans are everywhere. Minivans are actually kind of cool. But it wasn't that there were more minivans on the road that day than it was the day before. It was just that now my mind was activated to notice them. Like my brain was activated to notice them through that reticular activating system I was talking about. Because our brains are actually thousands of years old, meant to notice potential threats, spanning back to our ancestors. Think about this. If our ancestors were roaming the savannah and they heard a little twig snap, they'd have to notice that because it could be a tiger coming around the jungle to eat them, as opposed to noticing, like the perfect sunset where they want to get a selfie. But our brains are more attuned to notice threats and fear and negativity than positivity. Now think about what you feed your mind. Are you scrolling through negativity? Are you constantly binging on fear and outrage? Or are you intentionally consuming positivity, content that builds you, lifts you, and moves you towards your goals? Because positive media isn't fluff. It's actually fuel. And it has the power to rewire your thoughts, reshape your mindset, and rewrite your story. So here's the challenge. Listen to podcasts that build you up. Read books that stretch your thinking. There's some great authors on here that can inspire you. Follow people who inspire you, not drain you. Because when you fill your mind with more positive things, you won't just change your thoughts, you'll change your life. Because in the end, you don't become what you wish for, you become what you consume. Thank you.
I love it, man. Thank you so much, Keith. That was great. That was great. We need more of you in our feed, Keith, says Annette. Wonderful message. And going to keep me from doom scrolling tonight. Going to be listening to some positive podcasts.
Go.
Go for it. All right. So our last speaker will hopefully, I expect, will put you into a beautiful dreamlike state. Because that's what Kiran Ryan-Young does. He's a transformational leader, speaker, and the founder of A Million Dreamers, a movement devoted to helping people reclaim the dreams they were once told were too much or not realistic. In his debut book, Wake Up, It's Time to Dream, Kiran invites readers to see the pause in their life as a doorway, not a dead end. And I think, Kiran, you had an exciting day today too, right? Didn't you have something exciting happen? Maybe you'll talk. Sure.
Maybe.
Maybe. Anyway, with that, so Kiran will be our last speaker. We'll be ending right beautifully at 9 o'clock, and then we will stay on to take questions from all of the folks that have questions that they would like answered. So with that, Kiran Ryan-Young.
Thank you. It's 1967. I am 4 years old, sitting on the edge of my bed, dreaming in full, impossible color. No limits, no doubts, just imagination. And I look to... No, wait a minute. I want you to try something with me, just for a moment. Now, if you're comfortable, close your eyes. And if not, perfectly fine. But I want you to go back to your childhood room and just sit on the edge of your bed and look around. And what's on the walls? What's on the bed with you? What's by your window? Are there posters, stuffed animals, race cars, maybe ballet shoes, planets and stars hanging from the ceiling? And when no one is there with you, what do you dream of becoming? An astronaut? A Broadway star? A 4-time Olympic gold medalist? The creator of the biggest, best chocolate chip cookies in the universe? I'll go ahead. Open your eyes. Those dreams, the ones that used to make your heart race, where did they go? Somewhere along the way, we're told to trade those technicolor dreams for practicality. We're told to be realistic, to grow up. But dreaming isn't childish. Dreaming is human. And the dreams that stay with you, even quietly, even years later, they're not random. They're legacy calling. Because your dream is your legacy. Not because it fits in a plan, but because the dream you hold shapes who you become and what you leave behind. But to understand legacy, we have to understand what dreaming really is. And dreaming isn't something that just happens while we sleep. It's a choice we make while we're awake. Unconscious dreams, those soft, kind that drift away with the morning, they entertain us. But conscious dreams, the ones we dare to name and plant with intention, those dreams transform us. Because dreaming was never about arriving somewhere. It's about becoming the person capable of living the legacy that's calling you. Now, I learned this the moment I allowed myself to dream something that once I felt impossible. I wanted to be a parent. But as a gay man in the mid-'80s and '90s, that dream was unimaginable for most. There were no examples, no roadmaps. The world just said, that's not for you, buddy. And it felt like standing in front of your favorite birthday cake with the perfect number of candles lit and you're just about to lean forward and blow out those candles, and your teacher says, oh no, that's not for you, that's for Nikki. True story. So I buried it, or I tried to. And 15 years later, I was holding my newborn godson, my cousin Davina's child, and she had the same dream. She wanted to be a parent, and she'd chosen to do it on her own through artificial insemination. Now, in the late 90s, that was a big deal. Almost no one was doing that. But watching her live her dream gave me permission to speak mine. So as I sat there holding my newborn godson in my hands, I took a deep breath and said the words that had lived in me for years. I want to be a parent. And in that moment, everything shifted. Davina looked at me. She lit up and said, I'll help you. I'll have a baby for you. That was my first yes. A yes to a dream that I never thought I could say out loud. A yes that opened a door I never believed would open for me. And then 2 years later, on a first date with the man who would become my husband, and yes, it was more of an interview than a date. I was almost 40 after all. I asked him, what do you think about becoming a parent? And he smiled and said, I'd love that. And that was my second yes. And in 2006, our daughter was born. The dream became real, but even more importantly, I became the person capable of living that dream. Dreaming isn't escape, it's expansion. Who you become while you wait for what you imagine. And there's something else I learned. Not every dream comes true, but every dream changes you. It plants something inside that keeps growing. My grandparents once dreamed of moving to Spain. They took Spanish classes, bought books, practiced over dinner, and that move, it never happened. But something beautiful did. That dream made them students again. Curious, bold, open. Their conversations changed, their world expanded. And that dream, even unfulfilled, planted a seed in me. And as Alan mentioned earlier, This morning, I received a call saying that my offer on an apartment in Portugal had been approved. So that seed planted in them, that spirit of exploration, is part of my DNA. Every dream plants a possibility, even the ones that never bloom in our lifetime. Some dreams bear fruit we taste, others grow into shade someone else stands under. The point is not whether the dream happens. The point is that you were brave enough to dream it. And here's the part that surprised me most. Dreams don't just transform us. They transform the people around us. I come from a long line of dreamers. My grandfather, Fred, unapologetic, larger than life, grew up in the early part of the 1900s. I think he was born maybe 1918. But he, as a young man, rode freight trains across the American South. He played baseball in the Negro Leagues. He danced with a famous group at the time, the Ink Spots. He started businesses. He owned property. He traveled the world, everywhere except one continent. He didn't dream quietly. He dreamed out loud. And then there was my grandmother, Bernice. She was the keeper of all dreams. She was the first yes for all of her children, all of her grandchildren, anyone who was crazy enough to go on that ride. Then there was my mother, Hazel. She saw beauty everywhere. And when she retired, she didn't slow down. She started a travel company because her dream was to help people experience the world. Every itinerary she wrote was her way of saying, life is meant to be experienced, not just survived. She passed away earlier this year, just before I started writing my book. And I realized her dream didn't end. It evolved. It became part of mine. I grew up in a house full of dreamers. Dreaming wasn't an escape from life. It was life. So here's what all this has taught me. 1, dreaming is a process. It's how we become. 2, every dream plants seeds of possibility, even the ones that never come true. And 3, dreams are bigger than us. They ripple through generations. And that's legacy. Now, there's no scientific study that can measure the power of a dream, but maybe that's because science can only track what already exists. Dreaming is about creating what doesn't yet. Your dream is not a luxury. It's a responsibility. It's your gift. It's your legacy in motion. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to say yes. Because someday, someone will look at your life and say, because they dreamed, I believe I could too. So let me ask you, what dream is calling you right now? And what will your legacy be? Thank you.
Thank you. What a beautiful beautiful way to end the evening. What an inspiration you are, Kiran. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful, beautiful story and giving us all permission to dream. So I want to, as we close out and we go into our Q&A session for those who'd like to stay on, first of all, a heartfelt thank you to Shari and Tom and Stephanie and Keith and Julie and Tiff and Annette and Natalie, Scarecrow, Tin Man, the lion, and all of Oz. What a beautiful, beautiful evening of storytelling and sharing, and thank you so much. I believe in the transformative power of expression, in the quiver of a voice, the spark of insight, the laughs that release, the moment of recognition when someone says, "Me too." And I think that tonight there were a lot of people on this call who at some point said, "Me too," and how beautiful it is that you helped them feel seen and gave them the permission to be who they are, and also to provide the resources and your wonderful experience. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you speakers. We will be here now to answer questions for those who want to stay on. We won't be recording this section. We'll turn the recording off, but please stay on if you'd like to ask our speakers questions or have questions about anything. And follow-up emails will come out tomorrow with all links and goodies.